Remember when Liz Taylor got set up on a blind date after her divorce from Richard Burton and then married said blind date? I don't, because I wouldn't have arrived Earthside for another 9 years, so let's talk about it. It's 1976 and Liz is rumored to be canoodling with the Iranian ambassador to the US. But the Shah of Iran was like, not on my watch, and put a stop to their smooching. That ambassador was supposed to be Liz's escort to Queen Elizabeth's bicentennial dinner at the British Embassy, and suddenly Liz was dateless. Which was absolutely unheard of, really. The ambassador of the British Embassy did her a solid, though, and wrangled the head of the American Revolution Bicentennial Administration to be her escort. Liz was a wee bit horrified, though, when John Warner, a World War II and Korean War vet who had recently wrapped up his time as the United States Secretary of the Navy, showed up to her hotel in his own car that he himself had driven there. This was not Richard Burton. In fact, when the ambassador asked John if he knew who Elizabeth Taylor was, John had responded, "No, I don't know Elizabeth Taylor." As they got into his car, Liz asked if he drove himself often. "All the time," was his response. The horror. Despite their rocky start, the two hit it off as they shook hands with English Liz. Now, American Liz was quite taken with John, who was 3 years out from his divorce from Catherine Mellon. Yes, like Carnegie Mellon University. A very, very wealthy family. Catherine actually lived in a ranch next door to John so that the two could easily, parent their 3 children. The next day, she gave him a ring-a-ding-ding to see what he was up to. "I'm going to my farm and I'm not going to shave for a week," John told her. The next thing he knew, he was hanging out in his library on his horse farm when a limo appeared in the driveway. It was Elizabeth and all of her luggage. As they toured the property, Liz told John that she'd like the role of a farmer's wife, and she would get that wish 5 months later on December 4th, 1976, when she exchanged vows with John on his farm, making him her 6th husband. Some theorized they married quickly as John was intending to run for Senate, and he knew that having the iconic Elizabeth Taylor on his arm would help his bid. And boy, did she ever. People showed up in droves to meet her. But the sacrifice she made to be a senator's wife was immense. Liz was no longer a Democrat, surrendering her political beliefs for her Republican husband. He told her she couldn't wear her jewelry and that she had to get rid of her Rolls Royce and her yacht. She even sold the diamond Richard bought her to help finance John's campaign and gave up her favorite color purple after a group of women at a Republican luncheon told her that it was too royal and passionate. "I ended up in a tweed suit. Me, little tweed suits, what I wouldn't do for love," Liz later told Harper's Bazaar. John was sworn into the U.S. Senate in January of 1979, and with that, Liz's dreams of living on the farm and raising horses were gone. She did wear her purple Halston pantsuit to a luncheon that the Republican ladies threw for her after her win, though. Well, Liz was an asset to the campaign trail and helped drive fundraising initiatives. Once John had established himself as a senator, Liz found herself alone. A lot. She sat in their Georgetown mansion far away from her LA friends, watching TV and drinking. And the drinking added a decent amount of weight to Liz's small frame, which led to John giving her the ever affectionate nickname, Little Heifer. Eventually, the booze became booze and pills, and it was enough to worry Liz's son Chris when he visited her in Georgetown. In 1981, after the assassination attempt on President Ronald Reagan, Liz decided to pay for a full-page ad calling for gun control legislation in the New York Times. John was not happy. He begged her not to do it. But she ignored him and did it anyway. That same year, she decided to take a role on Broadway. John would head out to New York to see her every week, but then she took a role in London and it became more difficult for him to see her. They eventually decided to legally separate, but remain good friends. They officially divorced in November of 1982. When reflecting on her marriage, Liz had said, "I don't think I've ever been so alone in my life as when I was Mrs. Senator." That John knew he wasn't the love of her life and she knew she wasn't the love of his life, but that they did love each other. They got along wonderfully until he decided to be a politician, and then he married the Senate. A year after their divorce, Liz entered Betty Ford for treatment. After Liz, John would go on to date Barbara Walters before marrying Jeanne Vandermeide in 2003. John and Liz did remain good friends. After their divorce, Liz's kids knew their mom was sad, so they flew John in and wrapped him up, placing him in the middle of their living room. He jumped out of the package, surprising Liz. And in 1985, after Liz's friend Rock Hudson passed away due to complications from AIDS, Liz enlisted John's help in raising more funds for AIDS research. John passed away in his home in Virginia on May 25th, 2021 at the age of 94 due to heart failure. As for Liz, we all know she didn't stay single for long.